Welcome back to Thompson to Clark. Brad Evans and I, Double G here. Not been great for the BSPN network when it comes to the Warriors, but hopefully the Giants can pick it up a little bit because they had a pretty decent week last year. They started off this week not so great, but they have another game tonight that we hope that they can get back on the train here. But the big news is not about whether or not they're going to win tonight. We hope they will. It's about who's going to be starting at shortstop tonight. None other than the youngster coming to the big leagues, Casey Schmitt. What'd you think about this? I think you were a little surprised when you heard the news.
Yeah, I gave you a whoa in the text return because we knew it was going to be this year, and it was just kind of a little bit of a surprise today. I didn't think, and again, I don't follow day-to-day box scores of the minor leagues. We kind of get some blurbs here and there. Roger Munter will throw out some great stuff.
Yep.
Jeff Young throws out some great stuff. So we see some things. But I didn't think he was crushing it at the AAA level. And apparently he's not, but he's still hitting really well. He's got the power. He's finding the gaps. But it's the glove. I mean, if you can play great defense at second, short, and third, the Giants need you right now. And if you, and you're in the minor league system, I mean, this is the first Farhan infield or position player draft pick actually that has made it to the majors. So this is some pretty exciting stuff. That in itself is like, okay, he's arrived. The Farhan regime has arrived to the major leagues. Let's see what we can do from here. And then, hot on the heels, we could see Kyle Harrison after maybe 2 more starts if he pitched like he did in his last outing.
It's on the agenda for us to talk about here.
Okay. So I think, there's this is exciting. I think the Giants need a boost. I think the fan base needs a boost. They were what were we with this week? 4-2, 4-3 actually.
If you count 4-3 if you count game. Monday. Yeah.
If you count Monday, it was a 4-3 week. We started off the week with the Dubon slap in the face, and then ended with the Washington Nationals barn burner offense slap in the face last night. So
we didn't talk about the Dubon thing, but
no, it happened right after.
Yeah, it was right after we recorded.
Right after that game, he took it to the press and aired his dirty laundry about how much he didn't appreciate the little bit of playing time that he got. I mean, when you're goofing around on the base paths and bunting when you're up 11-0, it's playing time is going to be sparse, and when you're not like a Gold Glove caliber defensive player at any particular position, you got to work your way in. And he didn't like the little amount he was getting.
On one hand, the fact that he plays outfield and infield should have helped him,
right?
And that would have been an avenue for playing time, is to just be a solid defender. But he just kind of got screwed because he was out of options. And the Giants, they were hamstrung in a sense. Well, you're not really hamstrung. You create your own roster. But, there was I forget who it was that they had to clear space for, and they couldn't send him back down. And the way that they utilized their roster, where it's like literally like every 26, every member on the 26 man is like, there's a spot and there's a reason, and you can't really wait. Like, if he hit the baseball, I'm sure they would have found a position for him, but he just didn't. Now, the thing that, look, he could have every possible reason. This could just be him firing himself up, giving him a reason to play hard, to be mad at something. But, they traded for him, and they created the opportunity for him to get some reps, and thus he was traded to the team that won the World Series title. So if I'm Dubon, I'm like, hey, may not have been great, but they did the thing that sent me to the place I wanted to be, and I'm a world champion because of it. So that's the tact that I would have taken, and maybe he has taken that tact in other places, and we just haven't seen it. But we saw what we saw. last week, which was he was not very happy with the Giants. I almost feel like whenever they talk about that, I almost feel like it's a shot at the Zadie process. Like,
Yeah.
this is, we are just pieces to a puzzle for this guy. And in a sense, you kind of are until you aren't. And if you're Aaron Judge, then you're not. You're just line up every day. If you're Dubon, you're in the lineup two every 4 games or 3 out of every 5 games. And in some instances, if there's just tons of hard righties, then you're sitting for a little bit. So I understand it from his end, but the bigger picture for the Giants is that if this dude was hitting 350 with bombs, like, he's playing every day. Like, that's just the point.
And he's got a fantastic opportunity right now, unfortunately, because Altuve broke his thumb in the WBC.
Yeah.
Without that, is Dubon playing every day in Houston? Probably not. I mean, Altuve is manning second base, so you've got that. And granted, Dubon took the opportunity this season early and ran with it, and has hit fantastic and has come out of the chutes and is playing great baseball. Something has happened since that little post game scrum with the press, and he's hit 160 since then. So I mean, I mean, this is a guy who has a tendency to sometimes get into his own head, and maybe he did that. Maybe he said something and he regrets it, and now he's just not playing great baseball. But who knows?
Maybe Zadie's into voodoo that we just don't know.
There's a very good possibility.
So before we move on, I wanted to actually make this mention because Giants fans, longtime Giants fans, heard about the news of the passing of Vida Blue over the weekend. And I was fascinated as a kid by Vida Blue. I was probably like in the 4th or 5th grade, and you know how school libraries have some of the oldest books that like nobody would like. It's almost like they were hand-me-downs from the real library.
Oh yeah.
And so I found a Vida Blue biography. I believe it was written probably after his rookie season, or like, maybe soon thereafter. So it was, not one of these like really in-depth biographies, probably these paint by number biographies. But as a kid, I'm like, whoa, I get to read about baseball in the 70s. And, it's like 1988 or something, right? No, actually, in the 4th grade, I would have been, 86, 85, something like that. So I'm reading about Vida Blue going, oh my gosh, baseball happened before I started watching. And here's this guy who's a rookie, and he's just coming out. No one can hit him. And he's like in the All-Star game, and like just this only positive. And then I was also a big fan of media guides as a kid. You read that he's an alumnus in of the Giants, and then you kind of dig in even more. And it's like, this guy had such a fantastic career that was kind of derailed by something that derailed a lot of athletes in the 70s with drug use. And then we got to see him pretty much throughout the 90s and 2000s as like this really good Giants alumnus. If you were in the Bay Area, you heard the Cars for Kids commercial with Vida Blue like constantly, running or not in most places. And so like he just became this like really strong person for the community, for the team. And you look at that guy and you're like, for a couple of seasons, he was like the best pitcher in all of baseball. So I always loved that Vida Blue story. Lost at 73 years of age. You don't want anybody to pass away, but 73 still feels a little early.
It does. Yeah.
Our parents are kind of coming up around that age. So it kind of, when I see 73 and I'm like doing the math in my head, I'm like, oh, I don't want to hear that. Yeah. But yeah. So what was your Vida experience because you started watching a little bit earlier than I did?
Yeah, so Vida Blue, he had a second stint with the Giants in the 80s.
Yes.
So that was kind of, and I had heard the name and heard about him because of his Oakland days. My grandmother, my dad's mom, huge Giants fan. So growing up, that's kind of how I learned about the Giants for the most part, was through her. And she used to talk about Vida Blue all the time, Bay Area legend. So when I was my first year in Little League was 1983. I was 10 years old, started a little bit late. And oh no, wait, it was before that. I think I was 8 or 9. So it was early 80s, 81, 82. And I had 2 gloves and I played second base, but I had 2 gloves, and it was a Catfish Hunter glove and a Vida Blue glove. So of course, like you, I thought, I have these gloves, I'm going to try to learn as much of these guys as I can. So I would always ask my grandmother, and all she kept telling me was that 2 of the greatest pitchers ever. And they both pitched for Oakland. Vida Blue pitched for the Giants. And then again, 80, what was that? Probably 86 or so. Vida Blue came back to the Giants right towards the end of his career.
Yes.
And I had the baseball cards at that time. I was 13. And that was the first Giants year where we were like, okay, we're good. We have young guys and we have these veteran presence. So always her talking about how good of a pitcher he was, how great of a person he was. So those are kind of my memories. And again, we're kind of that age where we're missing a little bit of the late 70s, early 80s, because we were so young. So our teams are more the Robbie Thompsons, the Will Clarks. I go back a little bit earlier to like the earlier Dan Gladden, Jeffrey Leonard, Chili Davis, Darrell Evans, Jack Clark, all of those guys. So, but of course he wasn't there in between, in that time. But when he came along to us later on, he was fun to watch. And I thought, oh, cool. We got a legend on our team. And I remember that as a kid thinking, wow, we have this cool legend on our team. That's really something special. And so I tried to watch all of his starts for sure. And yeah, and then he was with the A's pregame shows. He did some Giants pregame shows with NBC Sports Bay Area as well. Always very knowledgeable, awesome guy to have on. They're going to miss him. And I mean, it's at that time where you start to lose all the legends, the 70s and 80-year-olds, kind of going out, and it's a bummer, but yeah, love the guy. I mean, any former Giant that's kind of like, we could have a wall in our offices, I think, with pictures of all of these guys. And we would just love walking into that room every time and pointing them out. And we, tell everybody about him, tell the kids, and the kids are like, who? I don't know that guy.
So I wanted to make sure that my description of his career was, I didn't want it to seem like that he completely fell off, because he didn't completely fall off.
Right.
He, in his rookie year, 1971, though he had a few starts in 69 and in 70, he goes 24-8 with a 1.82 ERA, 24 complete games, and 8 shutouts. So just MVP, Cy Young, starts the All-Star game, and just out of the gate, you're like, oh, this guy's going to be a Hall of Famer right out of the bat, out of the gate. Second year, I don't know. It looks like he may have had some injury problems. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but he only has like 23 starts compared to 39 the year before. But he bounces back 73, goes 20-9. ERA is not quite there. He's also not striking out as many people. 74, he's 17-15, 75, 22-11. So at this time in 75, he makes his second All-Star game. And then 76, he goes 18-13, and 79, he has his one kind of bad year by the terms of bad, which is his ERA is close to 4, and he loses 19 games. Then the following year, he's on the Giants. So 1978, San Francisco Giants, the last great year I'm talking about great year of his career. He goes 18-10. Still not striking out everybody, so he's changing a little bit, but he makes the All-Star game again. He comes in third in the Cy Young voting. He will then make the All-Star game again in 80 and 81. Really good ERA seasons, really good, decent FIP seasons. Not fantastic with the FIP. And then 82 to Kansas City. He's kind of a journeyman in Kansas City, comes back in 85 with the Giants, and finishes his career in 86. I didn't realize this because in 86, you and I are listening to just about every game we could possibly listen to.
Yeah.
He actually starts 28 games for that comeback Giants team, that 86 team that really kickstarts the late 80s and early 90s run of good teams that they would have. And then he goes 10-10, 3.27 ERA. FIP is a little higher, so some luck involved there for him. But he finishes off his career in a decent way for that 86 team. So full career 209 wins, 161 losses, 3.27 ERA for the entire career. So just not quite a Hall of Famer. But I'm sure if you look at like his best 5 seasons, like you put his best 5 seasons together, him and Lincecum, right? Like those are like the 5 you put together their best 5 seasons. Those guys are in, but other struggles outside of those 5 seasons. But I just wanted to give kudos to him. Really one of the first players that intrigued me when it came to the history of baseball, because I was just so interested. What is this story of this guy who pitched for both the A's and the Giants and was like the best player for the 1 year, and what happened? Like, so I was always very interested in that story.
Well, and then when you look at his first, his breakout year in 71, you look at the 301 strikeouts, and then he doesn't come close to even really 200 strikeouts in a season the rest of his career. And you go, I wonder how that happens. Well, it's just, he pitched in 312 innings in 1971. To put that in perspective, the last pitcher to throw 300 innings in a season was Steve Carlton in 1980. So that, we don't see 300 inning pitchers anymore.
Yeah.
Can you guess the around how many innings pitched was the leader last year?
195.
It was actually Alcantara, pitcher for Miami, 228.
Oh wow,
2 innings.
That is,
and in the
American
League, 201 innings pitched. So we haven't seen even close to 300 since 1980. It started kind of telling. We had some pitchers who threw 270-ish innings around the mid 80s, but so that's how he's getting the 301 strikeouts. Also, deceptive with that leg kick. That was just outrageously awesome. I remember in wiffle ball trying to emulate it a couple times, and I was like, no, I'm going to kick myself in the teeth.
All right, so let's talk about the latest news. So to make room for one Casey Schmitt, the Giants had to designate Darren Ruff, who just recently had come back. They kind of saved him from being designated by the Mets. And he would. I'm sure if he would have hit, they would have figured out a way to keep him around. But he didn't hit in like bonkers, and so he is the odd man out here. And you kind of wonder about somebody like him. He was already kind of a journeyman. He found his home because of what the Giants value. You got to think that there may be another team out there that can value his ability to hit left-handed pitching. So I hope he gets another shot. Maybe he clears waivers and the Giants can figure out something to do with him. But Darren Ruff off of the team currently to make room for Casey Schmitt.
Yeah, he's only hit 200 in Sacramento. No home runs. So that's a tough one. I'd hate to see his career end that way. He does always have the history of playing in Korea. So could head back there if he wants to continue playing ball. But there's got to be a team out there that needs a little bit of a veteran presence and a guy that can crush lefties. So he could stick around for possibly another season or two.
All right. Let's talk about the player of the week.
Yeah, so we do player of the week every week. This week, and I think going forward, kind of mixed it up a little bit. I wanted to make sure that we had, we're kind of using. I like to try to use as much of the updated, what do you call it? What are the advanced stats? I guess you could call them. Like for the player of the week in the past, I was using WOBA, which is the weighted on base average, which kind of helps in terms of figuring out who's getting on base, take out the ballpark factors, defensive factors, and everything else. And it's just how is that player getting on base using his skills. That's kind of what I was using in player of the week. It's not that far off from WRC plus, which is weighted run creation plus. And that actually, I'm going to read it here, takes the statistic runs created, adjust that a number to account for important external factors like ballpark or era. It's adjusted so a WRC plus of 100 is league average, and 150 would be 50% above league average, which is really good. So, for example, a player who plays his home games at hitter-friendly Coors will have a lower WRC plus than a player who posts identical stats at pitcher-friendly parks like Oakland Coliseum or Oracle. So I'm starting to use WRC plus a little bit more because I'm seeing that thrown around a little bit more often, and I like that stat. So it's weighted run creation. How are you helping the team score runs, which is obviously very important. If you're a Giants fan, you need more runs right now. So I threw 3 names out there, and of course, I always try to pick one pitcher. Sometimes it could be 3 pitchers. Sometimes it could be 3 position players. Totally depends on how the week goes. But coming in third, nice article written recently about Lamont and Wade Jr. by Baggerly on The Athletic. Lamont and Wade Jr. came in third, the 7% of the vote, and he had a 165 WRC plus for the week, which is 65% above average. Hit 316 on the week, 1 home run, 2 ribs, 4 runs, and a 20% walk rate. And that's a lot of the article that Baggerly wrote is about the walk rate. And also the swing rate, the take rate, and everything else, and how he's getting on base. I looked at his numbers. He's got 25 walks so far this season versus 25 strikeouts. Fantastic guy, hitting 260, 6 home runs this season. Healthy legs. He came into last season kind of banged up, hit 207 on the year, only played in like 77 games. So he took third place in the vote this week. Disco, Anthony DiSclafani, and we did this vote before the game last night where we got blown up in the first inning, by the way. This vote ended before that game even started. But Disco got second place with 35% of the vote. And he had the one game where he threw 8 innings, gave up 3 hits, no earned runs, and got the win that week. And Tyro, 182 WRC plus, and I think this is at least the second or third time he's won player of the week. He's having a fantastic season, Giants MVP easily, but he had a 182 WRC plus, 348 average, 2 home runs, 4 ribs, 4 runs, and a stolen base. Continuing to play steady defense at second base, which he worked on a lot in the offseason with Kai Correa. Just awesome to see. So player of the week this week, the great Tyro Estrada.
He is still hitting 347, which is amazing to me.
Yeah.
And not because I don't think he's that guy, but I've had people ask me, who are fantasy baseball players, going like, is Estrada real? Like, what's the thing here? And my answer to them was the only thing that's probably not real is the batting average. Because if you look at his BABIP, it's insanely high and it's not sustainable. So that will probably come down. But heck, if this dude hits 290 with 15 jacks and 35 stolen bases, you're talking that's all-star levels. And that would be great to see him in the all-star game.
Yeah, especially for middle infielders right now. I don't think there's any that are just, playing lights out. There are a lot of young middle infielders in Major League Baseball right now. So he kind of has a chance to cement himself, around Major League Baseball as the guy that you want to try to pitch around or be careful with. You don't want him on base because he's going to steal a base. He's got some speed. The Giants with Lamont Wade Jr. won. And in most of the lineups, it's Lamont Wade Jr. leading off, and then you got Tyro second, and then after that, you got a lot of strikeouts or home runs.
Yeah.
So a guy like Casey Schmitt, who's hitting 300 in Sacramento, he's batting 7th tonight in his first big league start. But having a guy like that, is he going to help stretch the lineup a little bit out? Which would be nice because, again, it's just it's a little bit frustrating to watch. Like, all right, Lamont Wade Jr. walked, and then, Tyro got on, and then it's strikeout, pop up, strikeout. And then we're out of the inning with no damage done. So,
right.
In a game like last night where Washington jumped out to a 5-0 lead, it would have been nice in the bottom of the first inning to get a couple runs back on the board and say, okay, we're chipping away and we're going to stick around. But it was just kind of a boat race after that.
The one thing I wanted to mention about Casey Schmitt is the fact that he can play shortstop allows them to keep Tyro at second base. Not saying that he's a bad shortstop or anything, but he is, he is an average shortstop. That is his, he doesn't have the great arm. And so for him to not have to think about, like, okay, now I got to go away from my best position, and play shortstop, and Crawford, to be fair to Crawford, he's probably not going to play 150 games this year. He's just an older player.
Right.
You're going to want to rest him anyways. So if you have a guy like Casey Schmitt who could play multiple positions, he can play shortstop, he can play third. Now I've read some stuff on him that, maybe third, he can probably be a really great defender, and shortstop, he's going to lean a little bit more towards being an average defender. But the fact that Tyro can stay put and he can, that will help his offense, I believe. So I'm actually interested in seeing what they do with Schmitt. It seems like they're going to give him some games right away. I don't imagine that they play. I probably when Crawford is ready, that's probably when he goes back down. And this is more of a let's just get him some reps here and see how he does and see how he handles being a professional. And then, later in the season, we may need him again. I'm guessing I haven't read that. So I'm very interested to see what he does, because, you want to see him have a good start, and you don't want to see him get down, and you want to see him help this team, because the team has been pretty plucky of late. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But before, let's talk about what we are drinking.
Excellent. Oh, one last quick thing on Casey Schmitt, though. We did a quick poll today just because he got called up, a little fun poll to see where everybody thought he was going to get his first hit. If he got his first hit tonight, which at bat, and most people said his second at bat. So I think a lot of people want him to settle in and get that knock in his second at bat. I said his first at bat. He's going to come out of the gate, man. He's going to come out of the gate. He's gonna make everybody kind of froth at the mouth after getting a base hit after his first at bat. Make a couple good plays on the infield early, and fan favorite pretty quick. So
I chose fourth AB because I think he'll get the jitters out, and then Giants will be up a bit in late in the game, and then not only does he get a knock, but he's going to go yard. That's my prediction.
Oh, look at that. I like that.
All right, let's get to what we're drinking.
Super simple. Drinking a little light tonight. I got the Corona Light with a lime in it, and it's almost gone. I started it a little bit early. Just, weather's been a little weird off and on. I might be doing something later tonight, so that's why I'm kind of going a little bit lighter. I became an adult this week, and I finally, I'm turning 50 this year, and I became an adult. I finally purchased my first long-term gas barbecue grill.
Oh, wow.
I had been one of those people that every, 3-4 years, I'll buy the $170 on sale off-brand barbecue from Home Depot or Lowe's or Sears or whoever's got it on sale, and I need a new one because the other one's starting to rust up or fall apart or whatever. This year I said I'm doing it, and I got myself a Weber, and I got one of them Weber Genesis, and it's supposed to last like 20 years. So
Oh
this
wow.
could take me to the end of my life. So this might be my last gas barbecue grill ever. So I've got to put that sucker together tonight, though, which so I'm having a little bit light drinks.
So I'm gonna need to buy a little bit of alcohol this weekend.
Ooh.
And the reason is because my youngest JJ graduates, and we'll be in Arizona this weekend, and there's a
Nice.
grad party for him. And you probably have about 10 young 20-year-olds. And so I'm like, want to make sure that they feel casual and have a little bit to drink if they want. They're adults, they're all over 21. And I was trying to think, like, what do young people drink? And I did this when Brian graduated. I was like, what do these kids drink? And it was all, I think we probably even had this conversation. It was all like the hard seltzers and all that stuff. But Brian said, just grab some Modelo's. And I was like,
that's kind of the thing now.
yeah, that might be the way to go, is to grab the Modelo's. But I told Crystal that we'll probably grab a couple bottles of white wine, because I imagine it's gonna be pretty hot out there.
It's Arizona, isn't it always like 105?
Yeah.
It's never anything else.
So
the other one
we'll have to be ready.
The other Mexican beer that is huge right now, that's kind of everywhere too, is Pacifico. A lot of people, because that kind of makes the rounds. It's back and forth. I mean, it's been around forever, but
from what I remember, Pacifico was pretty light. Like
it's Corona light basically, but
a
little bit lighter even, and a little bit cornier. It's got a little bit more of the corn flavor to it, because that's what they use. Mexican beer is a lot of times they use maize, corn, as their adjunct. Budweiser is rice. And then most of the other ones are like wheat, barley, hops, everything else. Hops are in these, but they're not, almost non-detectable. But it's a lot of like corn fermentation flavor, and light. It's good.
So my drink, and I'm already done. You were talking about going fast. I went fast. I bought. I was talking about this a few shows ago about my search for the old fashioned. Like, I just wanted to taste the old fashioned at all these different restaurants. Like when I'm going to Vegas in about 3 weeks, a little bit less than 3 weeks, and so I'm gonna have a couple old fashions. Just gonna try them out. And so they make these bottled cocktails now, and they're all pre-made, and you just pour it over ice. So I bought one from Thomas Ashbourne. And it's like $15 or $20 or whatever. And there's 5 of them in there. And, I was just like, is this as good as something that you would get a bartender to make? No, not even close.
Yeah.
But $20 for 5, that makes them about $4 each. And you go to a restaurant, they're $20 or whatever. So not a bad price there. But it's fine. Totally drinkable. Just not that high quality. If you're I'm sure an old-fashioned snobs are just going like, why would you ever buy any cocktail already pre-made in a bottle? It defeats the purpose.
If you enjoy
that's how I feel. That's how I feel. I'm like, why not?
Yeah.
I just want to try. I just want to try it. I just want to see how
Sure.
good it is. So that's what I was drinking today.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a good old fashioned. Quick shout out to the Lodge in Reno. It's this cool little. It used to be a brunch place up as you're heading up towards like Mount Rose Ski Resort towards Tahoe. It used to be a brunch joint. Now it's like a half ski rental, ski sales, bathing suits. I mean, it's everything. Like you're heading up to Tahoe, grab something on your way up there, and then the other half is a wine bar, just regular mixed drinks and coffee, and sort of like pastries and stuff like that. So Denise and I went up there for their happy hour on Friday, and I had an old fashioned up there, and whoever made it there made it a really good old fashioned. I've had some really, really bad ones, and and this one was just kind of near the top of my list, like top 3 that I've ever had. So if you're ever in the Reno area, skiing near Mount Rose, check out the Lodge on Mount Rose Highway. Awesome.
There you go. All right, let's talk about one specific topic before we look at this week that I wanted to bring up. And I want to give you some stats here. The early stats, we're still so early in the season. These stats don't really mean a ton. But if I was to tell you the Giants pitching staff, the starting pitching staff, 3 of the starters they have about a combined ERA of about 3, and those would be Logan Webb, Anthony DeSclafani, and Alex Cobb. Alex Cobb actually has a 2.01 ERA, and Alex Wood, who only pitched in the 2 games, is at a 1.80. So those are 4 guys who came right out of the gate pumping and throwing well. And then you get to Sean Manaea, Ross Stripling, and then your longer relievers, Sean Jelly and Jacob Junis. Who do you think is the worst pitcher out of those 4?
Out of those 4, worst in terms of ERA, or
Let's just
worst
go by
in
ERA.
terms of when they go
ERA.
to the mound, I turn off the TV?
that might be all of them at this point.
That's
all 4.
It kind of is.
A little harsh to Junis. He's not. He's still getting hit, but
he's getting
not,
some hard luck, man.
Yeah, he's not getting hit over the. He is getting hit over the fence like these other guys.
Yeah.
So maybe
Manaea and Junis and Jelly all pitched in Mexico City as well. So you got to take those out. But the worst ERA out of all 4 of them, I would say it's got to be Stripling.
Okay. Here are the ERAs of these 4 men. And Jelly has the least amount of innings, by the way. He only has 13 innings. He has a 10.13 ERA.
Ooh, yeah. You know what? I almost went with him because I don't think I've seen him pitch without giving up a run.
15 earned runs in 13 innings.
Ooh, man.
Next is Sean Manaea, 7.33. He's not giving up as many hits as the rest of these guys, but he's walking more than a batter every 2 innings. He's got 13 walks in 23 innings. Ross Stripling, 6.66. Now, the thing that's interesting about Stripling is he got really beat up in like a couple of those starts. So I'd like to see the splits as far as like certain games. He seems to be the one that might be figuring it out before everybody else. And then Junis is 19 innings, 26 hits. He's given up 5 bombs in 19 innings. Stripling's given up 8 bombs in 25 innings. So these guys are giving up the deep ball, and they're getting hit. And in Manaea's case, he's also putting guys on. So you mentioned somebody by the name of Kyle Harrison earlier in this show, and I think the exercise that I want to go through is how long can you keep running Manaea and Stripling out there? And they're not actual real starters, right? They're throwing like these half games and these split games, and they're coming in after, like, they're not like, you're not running them out every 5th day. The Giants don't really do that anyways. They're also doing it very matchup heavy. But how long can you go with these guys if they're not improving until you just go like, can we, if we're going to be competitive, can we? And you can't just bury them in the bullpen, can you? Like, I don't understand what the pitching staff is going to be like when when Wood comes back, then you have 4 guys who are starting, and then you got Manaea, Junis, and Stripling. That's 7 guys who are eating up a lot of innings. And then you got this young kid in AAA who's struck out like 2 guys an inning in the last 10 innings or something like that. And it's just like, I would love to see Harrison come up, but there's no room because you have Manaea and Stripling holding roster spots unless they get injured. And, the Giants can be good at, making mountains out of a molehill sometimes when it comes to the injury list. But I just don't see an avenue to bring up Harrison if both of those guys are still, on the pitching staff.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that too, because I mean it's crowded right now. So looking at Jacob Junas's contract, he could possibly be the odd man out. He's currently in the last year of his arbitration, and he's a free agent next year, and he's 30 years old, and he's going to be 31 next year. So if he doesn't turn things around, he could possibly be the odd man out. You can't trade Stripling. You can't trade Manaea. They haven't shown anything that any other team is going to want at this point, unfortunately. Unless there's a team out there that says, you know what, you eat the contract. I think we can fix whatever's going on with either of these two guys, and we can run it that way. Kyle Harrison, you can't keep him. Well, I mean, as of right now, you certainly can. You can keep him in the minors for as long as you need to. He's still a young kid, and he still has some control issues. And the Giants want him to throw more strikes. They want him to hit the strike zone more often. So you certainly can. But then that means you're leaving Manaea and Stripling in the rotation. We say with quotation marks because, like you said, there is really no rotation if you're pitching for the San Francisco Giants. But you can keep Harrison down for a little bit longer. You can hope that Stripling or Manaea, by the time All-Star break rolls around, that one of them has really started to turn it on. See if you can move them. But then you're going to run into the same situation you did with Rodon last year, where Rodon was pitching great, and people were afraid to trade for him because he had that opt-out.
Yeah.
So, and both of those guys have an opt-out. So you're in a situation where if they're both pitching bad by the end of the season, you're kind of stuck with them. $12.5 million each, not the worst in the world. And it's only one more season. And then maybe in the off season, things get figured out. Spring training rolls around next year. They start to become good. And then they're back in the rotation. Everything's fine. But yeah, I think Junis could be the odd man out. I think there certainly could be a mystery injury, and one of these guys could get a shoulder impingement or dead arm or something where they have to go on the IL, and then they're going to do a little rehab to kind of get themselves more innings and get themselves a little more straight, work on some things in the minors. Because one of the articles I was reading yesterday, I think it was, and escapes me who it was, but I think it was Baggerly on The Athletic. But he talked about how, Ross Stripling pretty much said, I'm working on some things, but at the major league level, you can't do that. You can't work on some things. He introduced a new pitch in spring training, which kind of took away his development of his other pitches.
Mm-hmm.
So that could have put him behind the 8 ball just a little bit in terms of time. So does he end up with a mystery injury, ends up in AAA in Sacramento to finally work on those 2 pitches that 2 or 3 pitches that are his main pitches and get going with those? There's options. There's still a little bit of wiggle room right now, but I think when you get into July, you might start to kind of run out of that wiggle room. And that's when you might see a Junis DFA at that point, traded to somebody for cash. You take the rest of his year contract off of our hands or whatever, and we'll take some cash back, or so I think there's some options going forward. I don't know if we'll see Jelly back up unless we really need a long relief guy. But I mean, like you said, I think we got 3 right now. So it's just kind of getting a little bit troublesome when you look at our 6-man rotation that we have.
I worry because, like you said, they may be untradeable. You may not be able to unload these guys. Here's the bigger worry, though. They suck. And then they opt back in next year, and we go through this whole dance again.
Yeah.
Though their contracts would be less scary to trade next year, but I just you don't want to see the team hamstrung with these older guys who are just not doing it. And look, you know, Manaea said very candidly that he never really worked that hard in the offseason, and this was like the first time that he ever did. And he got his fastball speed up, and the strikeouts are there, but also the walks are there. So maybe it's just a little bit of a tinkering, and you know, then he finds it and he becomes a really good addition. But yeah, that's you know, I don't want to rush Harrison up either, but you just look at Manaea and Stripling and you go, I have zero confidence when they're pitching. The game
and
does not
no.
feel like it's going to be a good game when those guys are on the mound.
You know, and I know Tristan Beck is up too. So I think when Wood comes back, Tristan Beck will probably go down. And then you'll have either Stripling or Manaea will end up being an innings eater. They might pitch in games where you have an opener. You know, there's a lot of options, and the Giants are pretty creative when it comes to the bullpen and when it comes to starting pitching. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of head scratching by us fans between now and the time they actually get it figured out, if they ever do. I mean, being a Giants fan, you know that you know the Giants brass doesn't always figure things out. They just kind of do things, and you're like, I guess this is how we're doing things now. So, you know, should be interesting to watch in the next couple of weeks here.
Okay, let's look at the schedule as we get into it. By the time people listen to this, the Giants will have already played game 2 of their series versus the Nationals. They play tonight, 6:45, so just in a few minutes as we're recording. And then they have a Wednesday day game, always fun. Those of you who have the opportunity to throw the radio on or throw your iPhone on and can watch the game, it's going to be a fun early afternoon game. And then, man, I didn't know I was going to be in Arizona when the Giants were in Arizona. We did this last year, and then Logan Webb got lit up by the Diamondbacks, and that
Right.
wasn't very fun.
Yeah,
But
don't go.
yeah, Giants are in Arizona. They'll play in Phoenix on Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday evening as well. It's a 5:00 start, and then they got a 1:00 start on Sunday. And, you know, just looking at the standings as they are, Arizona still playing pretty good baseball. If we go by my BS detector, which is run differential, you know, they're probably closer to an average team than but it's still early. They're competing. The Giants are minus 21 runs, and that is probably what their plus minus should be with their 15-19 record. But the Diamondbacks 20-15, they are plus 13 in the run differential. So those should be some competitive games. I feel like those teams are a little closer in competition than maybe the Giants are necessarily to San Diego and LA, but you know, San Diego and LA aren't setting the world on fire either. So that there may be, if the Giants can actually pick it up a little bit, there may be, you know, 4 teams who are actually fairly competitive in the NL West. And then you look at Washington, they're the opposite of the Diamondbacks. They're 15-20, though they're competing. They're not getting killed. They actually have a better run differential than Miami, who is actually a game and a half ahead of them in the standings. So they're playing competitive baseball. So losing to them, probably not the worst thing in the world as long as you take these next 2 games, because they're going to compete. So any thoughts on the rest of this week? What are you expecting from the Giants here, win-loss record-wise?
You know, it's kind of tough because this team right now, since they started the Mets series, they're a 9-8 team, right? I mean, they're a 500 club, and so looking at and going into this series, I thought, well, we can get right against the Nationals and gain a little bit of ground. But then I started looking at the Nationals' record and how they're playing baseball. They're a good team. I mean, they're not messing around. They're pretty much what the Giants are, and that's a good team, a below 500 team, but a good team. So it's tough. So I'd say they probably split the next 2 games, probably win tonight, get a little boost from having the rookie on the club, and you got a Webby on the mound. Going into Arizona is always a tough matchup.
It is.
Doesn't matter how bad Arizona is. Doesn't matter how good Arizona is. that's always a tough place to play because it's one of those places where you can have a 5-2 lead in the 6th inning, and it's so damn hot there that the ball flies out of that ballpark, and all of a sudden they're up 6-5. So it's going to be a matter of keep the ball on the ground, play good defense. If that's the case, I think with 6 games left this week, I think the Giants could probably go 4-2. If they play exceptional 5-1, but if they're giving up home runs, it's going to be, I think it's going to be another 500 3-3 week. So
yeah, you'd probably be okay with it, especially because half of this trip is on the road.
Yeah.
And then this is where they should clean up a little bit, which would be next week, as long as they're playing good baseball, because the Phillies and the Marlins, Phillies and the Giants are probably pretty close right now as far as how they're playing, but the Marlins are a little bit of like a pretend team right now, even though they're still under 500. That's when they would need to, do that 5-1 run that you're talking about. But heck, if they can put together, they had a good week last week. So if they play a little bit more like they played last week, the win-loss, maybe you do go 3-3 this week, but I think things will pick up. I just would like to see them closer to 500 and, a couple games above 500, because that means if you're a couple games above 500, you're in wild card territory, and that's where you want to be. That's the kind of team that we want to see on the field.
Yeah, because the wild card standings, if you look at the wild card right now, Giants are 2.5 games out of the final spot, which is San Diego. So, I mean, it's all still crowded. Everything's crowded. It's early in the season, but still, you don't want to start falling back to where, let's say, St. Louis is right now at 12-24, 6.5 games out of the wild card. Then you're scraping the rest of the season. Then you're starting to look at your roster and wonder, where can we trim fat? What can we do? But the Giants right now, competitive, 2.5 games out of that wild card spot. Keep battling, keep fighting. And we can see situations like this where Casey Schmitt comes up, and instead of we're saying, all right, it's time to just see what the kids can do, it's more like, okay, here's Casey Schmitt. He can plug a gap. He can give us, he can help us go from a Crawford type of shortstop defense to a Crawford-esque type of shortstop defense versus, like you said earlier, Tyro over at shortstop, VR, who's pretty much worked his way out of the starting lineup. Because he's hitting 140, 130, something like that, is striking out a tremendous amount of times. So you don't have to worry about him at second. You can move Tyro back over there. So it's more like you're still plugging in pieces to win ball games versus plugging in pieces to get experience. And that's a situation you don't want to be in. So I don't know. It's gonna be an interesting week. Still early in the season, but yeah, I think going to Arizona, always scary. It's the scariest game of all. I don't know why. Every season, the Saturday evening games in Arizona, those always end up really weird. There's always something weird that happens in those games. You'll go into the 9th inning. It'll be a close game, and something weird happens. So if something weird happens on Saturday night, don't say I didn't warn you, because it happens.
All right. We will be watching Casey Schmitt very closely. I don't think you can take JD Davis out of the lineup because he's their home run leader. Yeah. I don't know if you can DH JD against left-handers and move Casey to third. I'm just thinking more when Crawford comes back, because of Schmitt, Crawford, left side of the infield. I think your sinker ballers, your Logan Webb and your Alex Cobb, they would be very happy if that was your defense on the left side of the infield.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
All right, I'll be back. We'll be back next week. I'll have my maybe there'll be some tales from a college graduation party that
there you go.
So yeah,
gonna be wild.
I'll be with Hot Take Bry and Jay and the fam. So for Brad, I'm Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.
Peace.